Card, I want to talk to you about September 11th, 2001, 15 years later. Reflect for us a little bit on that particular day, that morning. What are the 11 words that you said to President Bush at the time, and did it occur to you where this country would be going at that moment, and reflect on those past 15 years?
Before the president walked into that classroom of second graders at the Emma E. Booker School in Sarasota, Florida, he had been told, and I was standing right beside him when he was told this, it appears a small twin-engine prop plane crashed into one of the towers at the World Trade Center in New York City. That's what I knew he knew when he walked into the classroom. After he walked into the classroom and I was still left in the holding room, the door shut, and the director of the White House Situation Room, a Navy captain at the time, Deb Lauer, came up to me and said, "Sir, it appears it was not a small twin-engine prop plane, it was a commercial jetliner." And then a nanosecond later, she came up and told me, "Oh my gosh, another plane hit the other tower at the World Trade Center." That's when I contemplated my responsibilities as Chief of Staff. And the test was, does the president need to know? The answer is yes, an obvious yes. I made a decision to pass on 2 facts, make 1 editorial comment. I thought about what I would say. I knew that I couldn't expect the president to have a dialogue with me because he was sitting in front of a press pool in front of these second graders. And I did think about the words that I would use. I'm not sure that I knew enough to think to use 11 words. It just turns out it was 11 words. I opened the door of the classroom, went in, and when it was appropriate, when the president was not participating in a dialogue with those young students, I walked up to him and leaned over and said, "A second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack." I then stood back from him so he couldn't ask a question. I knew that what I delivered as a message was a very unusual message. It was going to be a historic message for him to receive. I knew that he was in a venue where he really probably couldn't ask questions the way he wanted to, but I also had every expectation that he recognized what his job was as president. And I think that's the day he really recognized the great burden of being president, because he had to keep an oath of office, and the oath comes right from Article 2 in the Constitution, and it calls for him to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. That's a burden that is beyond comprehension for almost everyone to expect to carry. President Bush carried it well. And he carried it well because he recognized in order to keep his oath, other people had to keep their oath. And many of them serve in the military. They're all very young. And they took an oath to follow the command of the commander-in-chief. And that's the greatest burden that a president carries, knowing that other people have to keep their oath in order for him to keep his oath. And many of them will make sacrifices that he would never invite on anyone. So I knew the message I was delivering was a very significant message, and that it was a challenge that was going to be greater than the president had expected he would ever have to carry.
Mr. Card, very quickly, did you ever envision at that moment, at that time, that 15 years later our country would still be fighting in Afghanistan and be where we are?
Well, I did know the message I delivered that basically we'd been attacked. I mean, literally, we were under attack, was a declaration of war from a group that was not represented by a nation state. So this was going to be a very different challenge for America. It wasn't if you could argue over the shape of a table in Paris to sit down and find a solution. This was going to require an ongoing effort that probably would have been an evergreen challenge for the United States and the world. Fighting terror is, in fact, an ongoing war that must be waged every single day in many forums, and we play by the rules, the terrorists don't. So I did have an expectation that this was going to be a challenge that would continue through today, and it's been 15 years, and we're still carrying the burden of fighting a war on terror.
It is a day that has not only changed our country, but changed the world. Andrew Card, sir, thank you very much for joining us.
We promise never to forget. Don't forget the victims, don't forget the heroes, and don't forget the obligation to keep Americans safe.
Thank you very much, Andrew Card, for that reminder.